We got an update earlier this week for former Miami Dolphins offensive lineman Connor Williams, who's currently a free agent. Should the Dolphins kick the tires and look to run things back in 2024? We're exploring that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Want to give all of you a shout out who tuned in for the Kurt Warner interview here on Locked On Dolphins, which was our Thursday show. It ran Wednesday night. It's been met with an outstanding reception from all of you. So I'm filing that away to keep in mind any opportunities that I can find to bring in unique insights from other analysts, particularly those who have walked in the shoes of some of these players. It's going to be something that I'm going to be a little bit more keen and aggressive trying to collect and hopefully continue to bring you guys the best possible content on this platform that I possibly can. The Dolphins have been aggressive in June with free agency with some newfound dollars, but not necessarily aggressive with how they're spending them. Now, this is teeing up the Connor Williams discussion, but it's also an acknowledgement of the contract terms, which at some point overnight last night came in for Calais Campbell on overthecap.com. So I wanted to acknowledge this on today's show because this is a big deal. The Dolphins have signed Calais Campbell to a contract, which we know. We did shows on it when it was announced. But the terms of the contract are like my jaw is on the floor type of good for Miami. It's a 1-year, $2 million deal for Calais Campbell. The same dollar amount that you're getting Jordan Poyer for. You're getting Calais Campbell after he played for $7.5 million last season. He gets a vet minimum salary with a signing bonus of $790,000. So $1.21 million plus a $790,000 signing bonus. 1-year, $2 million contract for Calais Campbell for a guy who last year had 7.5 sacks, played over 750 snaps for the Falcons on the edge, and is expected to kind of kick back inside and be more of an inside presence based off of what he was in Baltimore when he was there alongside Anthony Weaver, and kind of get him back to a versatile role that can line up all over the field. This has the potential to be one of the best value contracts for the Dolphins on the roster in 2024. His tape last year was that good for $2 million. I would have guessed it would have been at least 3 times that, which is why it's getting a little bit of glow here on the Connor Williams, revisiting Connor Williams show that we have on deck here today. And this is spurred on by a post from Adam Schefter from earlier this week. This was about 2-3 days ago in the evening. He put out a post. And here's the post. Former Cowboys and Dolphins free agent center Connor Williams, who's coming off of season-ending knee surgery, expects to be ready for the start of the season and is in discussions with multiple teams about where to play in 2024. He plans to pick his new team before training camp begins. Okay, you read in between the lines, and the usage and verbiage of new team doesn't necessarily bode particularly well for the Dolphins to be in contention to bring him back. The Dolphins did make an investment at the center position with Aaron Brewer. I know there's some questions about whether Brewer could go back to guard, which is what he played in 2022, or if he could sign Connor to play guard, which he was with the Cowboys before he came to Miami, and they converted him to be the center for the team. There's a lot of we don't know. We don't know what Connor Williams' appetite would be to play guard, especially as a center. You have a little bit more impact on the play. You potentially have an argument, although guard spending this past year has surpassed that of center spending. I think from a positional value standpoint, the guy that touches the ball and is a little bit more of the in-space weapon, is perceived traditionally as a little bit more of a premium player, not as much as tackles, but more so than the guards. But the status for Connor Williams, according to Adam Schefter, and of course, Drew Rosenhaus is the representation here, expects to be ready for the start of the season. That's significant because this injury happened in December, right? It happened in the first half against Tennessee. Miami could not rebound in that game. Their entire sequence was thrown off by that loss of Connor Williams inside. And you felt it with how they were able to play offense or not able to play offense for much of that game. You missed him sorely when he was not in the lineup early in the season and late in the season. But for him to have a December surgery, it sounded like there was some concern about kind of the recovery window from him. And at least according to Adam Schefter this week, the recovery process seems to have picked up a little bit. In discussions with multiple teams about where to play, plans to pick his new team before training camp begins. So timeline, you're looking at about a month, right? The Dolphins released some of their training camp dates for fans earlier this week as well. You're about a month out from training camp for Dolphins players. So expect a decision made in the fairly short future. And the fact that Miami has added Marcus May and they've added Calais Campbell, and from a salary cap perspective, their top 51 offseason roster, it's less than $2 million in cap space that they have conceded to sign Marcus May and Calais Campbell. It does kind of leave the door open for, depending on what happens with Tyreek Hill's contract, depending on what happens with Tua Tagovailoa and his contract extension that they've been working on for quite some time. All of that aside, they have some space. They get about $16 million in cap space right now. And you need about 4 to 5 of that for the practice squad throughout the season. You need another 4 to 5 of that for operating budget to get you through with player injuries and signing new players to the team and whatever else. That you have the ability you have some wiggle if you want it to add a player of a meaningful salary. And I thought that was going to be Calais Campbell. So it at least kind of puts the door back open for, okay, where is Aaron Brewer within this Dolphins offensive line with the investment that they made in his skill set? What was Connor for the team? Where else could he help you if he's receptive to helping you? And then what kind of cost could you offer Connor Williams? So I guess this shows a little bit more of looking at like, what can Miami offer Connor Williams if he's interested in playing with the Dolphins again in 2024? We're going to look at the dynamics of who Miami currently has on the roster inside. That's next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure that you stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience are not just the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home big dubs. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. The first bit of apprehension that I have for a hypothetical Dolphins pitch to Connor Williams is it would be guard for me. Connor Williams has showcased throughout the course of his NFL career, which is 6 years in duration now, that he can play guard and he can play center. Where I think you look at Aaron Brewer, who the team signed to a 3-year, approximately $21 million contract this offseason. His tape at guard is bad. It's not good. And the tape at center this past year was his first time in a really long time being a center and going wire to wire and being at that position. Showcased a lot of things that the Dolphins are going to covet with their offensive lineman. And it was kind of the same book when they signed Connor, and Connor was a guard. He said, oh, they're going to move him to center. That's weird. But the athleticism, the range, the short area quickness, the leverage that he plays with because he's so good with his bend, even though he's a college tackle and he's a little bit taller for a center, despite not being the heaviest guy, like it all popped big time. And for Brewer, for me, I think about Aaron Brewer, who you've made a reasonable financial commitment to already. And you're not dealing with the recovery timeline of an ACL tear like you are with Connor Williams. That's a 1-for-1 for a financial benefit. So it's, he signed that deal 2 years ago and it was about $7 million per. Brewer signs a $7 million per contract 2 years later. So it's a lot smaller percentage of the cap for about 80-85% of the player type of situation. So you're getting a reduced cost for a reduced player, but it's a marginal drop off, right? Or at least that's what I anticipate based off of Brewer's tape last year with the Titans. Connor held out last year for portions of the offseason because he wanted a new contract with the team. So it seemed like maximizing the earning potential and getting that long-term runway was important. At least it was at this point last year to Connor Williams. Well, you're not going to get that at this point in time coming off of an injury, no matter how good you were or how good it looked when you played, contrasted to how much you were missed when you were out of the lineup. I just don't think the resume and the leverage for Connor Williams right there is to cash in big time. And if he wants to maximize his earning potential, and that's important to him, probably getting a chance to go back to that position to showcase himself to be an offensive weapon instead of a little bit more in the muck guard. You got to deal with more guys lined up over top of you. You're covered up more often, so your ability to get out in space is a little bit more mitigated. You need a little bit more raw vertical power to be able to sustain when guys are lined up on your inside shoulder or your outside shoulder, and they're going to try to shoot up the field. And to negate that and then get that knockback and reestablish the line instead of being kind of the kickstand of the help and then climbing up to the second level and working the linebackers. It's a different utilization. And there's a reason why the league has generally, at least historically, and that didn't necessarily stay true this offseason where a handful of teams spent crazy dollars between the Panthers and the Rams on their guards. The perception is finding alternatives for economic friendly deals is a lot easier to do at guard. So if that's what you have to swim up against as a player who was a guard and then moved to center, and then you wanted to cash in a big contract at center, and now you're hypothetically talking about going back to guard, I could see why the appetite might not be there. I can't guarantee that that's Connor Williams' frame of mind, but I'm kind of inclined to think he's going to want to be put in a position to put his best foot forward and showcase the maximum value version of himself so that he can kind of get back into that pursuit of that deal that he was looking for from the team last year that he didn't get. And I believe we did a show last summer that was like, look, if Connor Williams is going to hold out and he wants a new contract and the Dolphins are going to give him a new contract, this is what it could look like. And it was about $11 million per season was what I had kind of put together. It's like, look, this is what a competitive offer could theoretically look like for part of the negotiations. And that didn't happen. Right. And now Miami is going to save themselves some money for, again, a lesser player. I'm not going to say that Aaron Brewer is the same thing, but Brewer's drop-off playing at guard makes it much more of a one-dimensional conversation for me. Do I think Connor Williams would be better than Isaiah Wynn and better than Liam Eichenberg and better than Robert Jones and better than your other options that you have to play at guard? Yes, I do. I think Williams would be a better guard than Brewer as well. I think Williams would be a better center than Brewer. But the offensive line, you're looking for the best combination of five guys. Your best combination of five is going to include Brewer, whether Connor Williams is on the team or not. And that player is individually best at center. So that becomes like a non-negotiable for me. And that might make Miami a non-negotiable for Connor Williams. I'm just saying, like, it's very easy for us to sit here from the sidelines and say, oh, we need to get it done. Go ahead and sign Connor Williams because he's looking for a team and just play him at guard. Well, what if he doesn't want to play guard, right? Like the human element of it, we don't know. And that's why at the very beginning we alluded to there's a lot we don't know. We also don't know what his market looks like. Now, we do know that he's reportedly talking to a number of teams. There are a number of teams that I can tell you this with a great deal of confidence based on what we're doing over at Locked On NFL Scouting right now that would surely welcome his services. We'll talk about that a little bit next and what his market could look like here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Summertime means baseball. We have the NHL Finals Game 6 tonight, and you can bet on it all with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet on everything from who is going to score a goal tonight, to who's going to hit a home run, to some NFL futures if you're interested in that kind of thing as well. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So, how big could the market be for Connor? I think the first thing you have to acknowledge is what kind of market is out there across the league, particularly for a starting center. There's some spots that I think would make a lot of sense that maybe don't make a lot of sense based off of Connor's background, the Dallas Cowboys being one. They have presumably a rookie tackle in Tyler Guyton. It could theoretically be Tyler Smith, who has played guard for them since they drafted him. And then either Brock Hoffman or Cooper Beebe is the center for the Cowboys. I think that's a spot that would make a lot of sense. The problem is Connor already left Dallas, and it didn't feel like it was on particularly good terms. You have the Seattle Seahawks, who remade their entire interior offensive lineman. They have a fifth-round second-year player in Olu Olatimi, who's scheduled to be the starting center for that football team. You have the New York Giants, who spent heavily on John Runyon at guard and also added Jermaine Illuminor and have a second-year player in John Michael Schmitz, but he was up and down to some degree last year. The Philadelphia Eagles, how much trust do they put in Cam Jurgens, who was a day 2 draft pick out of Nebraska as an undersized center to be the replacement for Kelsey? They also have Tyler Steen at one of their guard spots that you say, maybe not. If you're willing to play guard, I think Minnesota with Dalton Risner and Ed Ingram, there's an upgrade opportunity there as well. If you're willing to play guard, I think the Washington Commanders with Sam Cosmi at one guard spot, but Nick Allegretti, although he got paid handsomely, and then Tyler Biadasz, I think that'd be an upgrade. I think they're probably over-invested. How about the 49ers? Jake Brendel, I know, has been a serviceable player there. I certainly think that Connor Williams would be an upgrade in that spot. There's a lot of different outcomes, but if you're looking purely at center, I could see the Houston Texans, who have some Shanahan background with Bobby Slowick as the offensive coordinator. They have Juice Scruggs kind of penciled in as a young player out of Penn State who hasn't played a lot of snaps. And they got 2 question marks between him and Kenyon Green on their interior offensive line for a team that's very aggressively and assertively into a win-now mentality and frame of mind. There's no shortage of opportunities. I think it is a little bit more narrow at center, so that is kind of the question. Do you have to play center? If you have to play center, you probably have 3 or 4 teams knocking on your door. If you're willing to play guard, I think that opens it up to a much larger net, in which case it's helpful for Miami in that regard. But if it's a much larger net, you're going to have teams that don't have an eye on a big quarterback contract and 2025 salary cap carryover, because whatever you don't use in salary cap space, you can carry over into next year. Those elements for Miami do have some level of restrictive, let's not burn up all of our non-operating cap for the 2024 season because we're going to need it for X, Y, or Z. And the larger the net is, the higher the competition is, theoretically, the more spend is going to be required to secure the player. The good news for Miami is I assumed that player was going to be Calais Campbell when it was announced that he was signing. Again, I would have guessed at least $5 or $6 million. They got him for 2. Now, I think maybe Miami's spending in this window is a little bit of a lesson, too, to be taken and not say, hey, they still have the big money guy that they can go out and swing for. And instead, maybe it's, hey, they want to preserve as much of this as possible for internal affairs. So I think you take that. I think you take the investment in Aaron Brewer. I think you take the existing presence of Brewer as somebody who is significantly better option at center versus guard. And then Connor and his own respective interests. I don't know that this is going to fit. I'm not saying I wouldn't try. I'd certainly give a phone call, get an idea what the market is, get an idea of whether or not he's receptive to play guard or not. But like there's certain terms and conditions that I think would have to be met for this to happen for the Dolphins. And I'd kind of be surprised if it did. And a lot of that goes back to how it was worded by ESPN's Adam Schefter when he put the post out earlier this week that Williams was kind of in talks with teams and getting ready to gear up and get ready to go. We'll see what the Dolphins ultimately do, if they do anything for the interior offensive line. It's to be determined. They certainly have enough salary cap space to make something happen if they want to, Connor Williams or otherwise. But that is going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. Fins up. I'm out of here.